Welcome to the TRU Leader Podcast. Today we have a very informative and thought-provoking conversation about our relationship with work. Don't miss it.
Welcome to the TRU Leader Podcast. I'm Dr. Tracy Christopherson.
And I'm Michelle Troseth.
We are life and business besties, leadership coaches and mentors, and polarity intelligence experts. We're the authors of Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and co-founders of Missing Logic.
We are here to help high-achieving leaders break through leadership norms that cause them suffering at work and home. If you're looking to elevate your leadership, increasing your productivity, effectiveness, and impact, and manage your health and well-being, spend quality time with those you love, and live your best life, then you are in the right place.
Our goal in this podcast is to equip you with new ways of thinking and practical and tactical strategies for succeeding at work and thriving in life. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of personal and professional development so you can reach your full leadership potential, create a life you love, and be what we are calling a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable or true leader.
If you are ready to learn and laugh a little, let's get started. Welcome to another episode of the TRU Leader Podcast with your hosts, Michelle
and Tracy.
Here we are.
Do you ever think maybe we should try different co-hosts sometime?
Maybe we should have mystery hosts, mystery co-hosts.
There we go. Oh,
Ooh.
Yeah, that might be kind of fun.
Yeah.
I wonder what that would be like. Okay.
I don't know.
Hey, must have been that quiet time this morning, just all kinds of ideas flowing in today. It's a flow day. Yeah.
Well, listen, we're going to be talking about work today. And you may or may not realize. It's so funny.
Nothing, just like, how exciting is that? We're going to talk about work. Oh, yay. I bet our listeners are just jumping up and down. They're going to talk about work. Stick around. It's going to be exciting. Keep going, Michelle.
Well, just in preparation for this, we were just realizing, or I was starting to say, you may or may not realize, listeners, that Tracy and I have worked together for over 30 years. Like, we know each other pretty well.
Actually, almost 40.
Almost 40? Yeah, it is
almost
40.
It's 2024. Yeah.
That's a long time.
Let me orient you to the time and date, Michelle. Yes, it's been all over 40 in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of different ways, right? And what we really want to talk about today is our relationship to work.
Yes.
Not just about work, but I mean, that's a big factor of it. And we have worked together for a long time. We work together as clinicians at the bedside. That's a whole different experience, right?
Yeah.
And then as leaders, leading initiatives in the hospital, and then as really, consultants working with organizations across the country as leaders leading interprofessional practice. Like, we've worked together in a lot of different ways, and work has meant something different, I think, in each of those
situations.
Contexts.
Yeah. Yeah. We work together as legacy partners and planning for our future. We work together to establish Missing Logic. So a lot of different ways.
Yeah. And I think, most of our work that we have done and our relationship to our work has been driven by our purpose and our passions, right?
Definitely.
For a bigger, greater purpose has always been driving the work that we've done and our relationship to our work. Mm-hmm. And we're in these challenging, changing times right now. And it's time to step back and really look at what is our relationship to work. And I think a lot of it was stimulated by the pandemic because it changed everybody's experiences, right,
Right.
of work, and then what their life meant, and then what the relationship between their life and work meant. And it just kind of made everybody pause and really get clear on what mattered and take reflection, I think, on what they were experiencing, what they want to experience. I think not everybody, but for many people, that was a factor. Their work was heavily impacted, by the pandemic, and their lives were heavily impacted. And we've just been in this shift, not just from the pandemic, but other things
Mhm.
as well,
Yeah.
right? In our cultures and societies have been shifting things. And we recently ran across an article, again, in Fast Company. We did an episode previously about a Fast Company article. So they're stimulating us this month. But this was really an article from Enrique Lores, who is the president and CEO of HP, Hewlett Packard. And it was just really intriguing. There was a lot of data in it. And I think it's important to share kind of the details, the data that they uncovered, because I think it just tells a lot about our work environments right now. And they really commissioned what they called the HP Work Relationship Index. And they asked more than 15,000 people across 12 different countries how they felt about their work and what their expectations are moving forward. So kind of, it's not everybody, but I think it's a great indicator. And what they found in that survey was only 27% of knowledge workers feel they have a healthy relationship with their work. So that means 73% don't.
Do not. Yeah.
Do not. That's a lot of people, right?
It
I mean,
is.
that's a significant chunk of the pie when you think about it, right? And that's a big problem because you can't succeed long term without motivated and engaged workforce. And we've been hearing a lot about the challenges with motivating and engaging the workforce. So it kind of parallels what we've been hearing from leaders
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And we also know economically, companies lose and waste a lot of money if they don't have an engaged workforce.
Sure. Sure.
So,
Yeah. And then the other thing they found was only 25% of the respondents felt they consistently receive respect and the value that they deserve. And even fewer experience flexibility, autonomy, and work life balance that they're seeking. So that means 75% do not. 25% do, 75% do not. So that's, again, another big chunk of the pie, right?
yes.
That's just really showing us what people are looking for and what they are or are not receiving in the work environments that they're in. And that's really significant. I think that's mind blowing.
It is. That's a lot of people who
Yeah.
don't feel respected and valued.
In their work environments, right?
Yep.
And what they really were looking for going forward was a sense of purpose, empowerment, genuine connection to their work, right?
Mhm.
But only 29% said they consistently receive that today.
This is kind of a gloom and doom, Tracy.
I know. Well, it's just showing you the realities,
Yeah.
right? And again, we're in this volatile time, right? A lot of uncertainty, a lot of change, and a lot of complexity. And I just think I think you got to hear the numbers and really let them sink in. That's a lot of people.
It is. It is.
If you look at your organization, this was true in your organization, 3/4 or more of the people were not connected to their purpose or were not experiencing feeling valued. That, like, how could you survive as an organization if that was what was happening?
Mm.
So I think it's a huge wake up call.
It is. It's
Huge
it's
wake up call.
alarming stats. Alarming.
Mhm.
And then, in fact, 83% of people say they are willing to earn less if it means feeling happier at work. Now, I just think that is amazing because so many people think it's about the money. And certainly with the workforce challenges going on right now in this post-pandemic time, there's a lot of voices out there of more money, more money, more money, but that's not what people want. They're willing to earn
It's
less.
not everybody
Not
wants
everybody.
that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Not
not
everybody.
everybody. But yet we can kind of think that that's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really important too. And I think that aligns with what people looking for purpose, people looking for meaning. They want to make a difference. They want their work life, they want their work to be different, and they want their relationship to the work to feel different. And I think that's just really it's just really, really important, and to pay attention to that. And we have to pay attention to that as business owners too,
Absolutely.
right? And even for ourselves. And so, yeah, it's just really concerning and cause to just kind of step back and really think about things. Yeah. The work is changing. And we have to kind of figure it out, right? We have to figure it out. So I think studies like this are really, really valuable. Another thing that came up too in this study was about technology and the tools that people have. And people really felt like 3/4 of the people surveyed said tools and technology are integral part of their success, no matter where they're working from, home or in the office, right? They need the technology and those infrastructures to support them, but they also wanted them to enable them to be seen and heard. I thought that was really interesting because you hear a lot about how people hide, right? In technology, they don't turn their cameras on and, the different things, but they wanted these to be able to be seen and to be heard from wherever they are. And I thought that was really interesting too. Really interesting.
And that they also acknowledge that the technology gives people flexibility, which was another important factor as well.
Yeah. And it can help them stay connected, collaborate, all those kinds of things, right? So I think, these are important things to pay attention to because we have to have happy employees, right? We have to keep the talent in our organizations happy. That's just the happier they are, the more productive they are, right? It goes hand in hand. And it helps to spur innovation and create more success for the company. So these are really important factors to pay attention to. And he suggested 3 focus areas, one being rethinking productivity. So what does productivity really mean? In the past, right, productivity is all about the hours and the output.
Yep.
How much you're doing in the hours that you're working. And especially with a large population of knowledge workers, right? Hours do not necessarily have to equate to productivity. So I think it's just really important, again, to think about that and how we frame our work in terms of hours, and how many hours we're putting in, right, into that work. The other thing that he talked about was evolving the culture, and I think that's critical as well, right? Because unless we address the culture, many of these other challenges are not going to be addressed. So we have to think about aligning people with their strengths, which is a big thing that we do, right, in our organization.
Yep. And then he also talked about upgrading technology, how you have to stay on, whether you like it or not, you have to stay on the cutting edge with technology because it can be obsolete before you know it. And it makes such a big difference to the satisfaction of the workforce as well.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Yeah. So another way or another, side of the coin, so to speak, of looking at how we relate to work is also the connection between passion and burnout. So,
oh yeah.
Do you know anything about that, Tracy?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think I love that you brought this is 2 sides of the coin. So there are those that aren't getting enough.
Yes.
And maybe those that it's too much, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's important to, stop and even think about how this relates to you as well. And when when we equate work to just doing what we love, what can happen is we can start working all the time, because in our mind, it's like, well, I'm doing what I love. And that this also can lead to burnout and over time, right? Because you're just not letting your foot off the gas when it comes to work. So it's really important to pay attention to that. And there are certain sectors and roles that are at increased risk related to purpose-driven work. And according to a study published in the Journal of Personality, that's a Journal of Personality, this type of labor can breed obsessive versus harmonious passion, which predicts an increase of conflict and thus burnout, because you're just so passionate and on all the time. And the Mayo Clinic lists of burnout risks. 2 out of the 6 are related to this mindset, because you're, again, so passionate about the work that you're doing. You identify so strongly with the work that you lack balance between your work life and your personal life, and or you're working in a helping profession.
Yeah. Well, we know all about that.
Yeah.
We know all about living this, right?
Yeah.
So I think, for many, many years in our work, we were dedicated to the mission of the work that we were doing, to the purpose of the company, and really, sacrificed a lot in our lives for the sake of the mission, to move things forward, to have a greater impact, to transform healthcare. Like, it drove everything that we did. We worked long, long hours, many, many weekends, right? And we did it with great love and passion. But I think there were a lot of times where we burned a candle at both ends, where it had a negative impact on us. But we were so dedicated and so focused on making that difference that, there were times where it did have a negative impact on us personally, even while we were experiencing great joy in what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
It was too much at times, right? And so I get that. I totally get this, being purpose driven, and if you're in a helping profession, you've got that, you kind of got that purpose and passion driven emphasis on nonprofit. If you're in healthcare, right? If you're a healthcare practitioner, right? It's all about, serving the people and making a difference, and that when there's that overemphasis, that can really, really have a negative impact. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's important to be aware of that. You're
Mm-hmm.
what puts you at risk of what your passion is.
The dynamic balance effect is the only way to excel in your professional life and career while living a fulfilling, thriving personal life. Think about it. Your professional life and career and personal life are like two sides of the same coin. There's an interdependent relationship between the two, and that relationship is governed by the law of polarity. Polarity, as you now know, if you've been listening to us for any length of time, is a universal law, just like gravity. You can't avoid it or deny it. It's always present and always working on and around you, just like there are always two sides to a coin. What you may or may not realize is that one of the governing principles of polarities is you cannot achieve a greater purpose without achieving the positive outcomes of both poles in the polarity. So how do you expect to excel in your professional life and career if you're not fulfilled and thriving in your personal life? And how do you expect to live a fulfilling, thriving life if you're not excelling in your professional life or career? Well, you can't if you don't have the right strategy or effective approach to creating a dynamic balance between these two poles. In fact, you're guaranteed to fail and experience negative consequences 100% of the time if you don't create this balance. It's how the law of polarity works. But you won't have to experience this if you join us in our TRU Leader Mentorship Program. Just click the link in the show notes and set up a discovery call with us, where we'll share with you how the dynamic balance effect enables leaders like you to be true leaders, creating dynamic balance between their professional life and career and their personal life, living and leading on purpose, and designing the life they desire with intention and grit. Individuals that have balance between their professional life and career, or their work and their personal life, experience more happiness and are more productive and effective. So what do you want to experience? Guaranteed failure and negative consequences, or more happiness, productivity, and effectiveness? Just click the link in the show notes and schedule a discovery call today. And it kind of creates that always on culture.
Yes.
Where you feel like you got to be on 24/7. And our technology, right, has kind of pushed us in that direction too, where, we're accessible all the time.
Yeah.
Where, years past, we didn't have pagers that, we could get paged at home. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have, technology has evolved, and with the evolution of the technology, so has access. And sometimes when you're in this, kind of one of those passion driven, purpose driven, you feel like you need to be accessible all the time to keep things moving, right? To keep the fuel going. And it can really lead to a lot of, after hour work, right? Which again is all about the hours you're putting in, the productivity, the difference that you're making. All that can really drive us to burnout.
Yeah, it's probably not a good thing when you're sending a colleague an email at 2:00 in the morning and they reply back.
No, not at all, right? But we're also facing times of increasing demands on leaders. And sometimes people feel like the only way to perform, to have strong performance, is to be available around the clock,
Yeah.
right? Is to be stressing over work-related questions and problems all the time. And because they feel like that's their only choice, that's their only option. And then there have been studies, though, that show when you do that, when your focus is on work after work, you're not necessarily that leader that you want to be, right? There are studies that show that followers notice those that take the time, that, turn off the electronics, that take the time to rest and rejuvenate after work hours, are much more effective leaders and have, more impact than they do when they are, on all the time and answering the questions and dealing with all the issues and problems that are happening 24/7, right? Then they're less effective, and studies have shown that.
Right.
I think that's something to really pay attention to.
I do.
Right?
I do too.
Yeah. It's not a badge of honor to work nonstop,
Mm-mm.
right? It kind of goes back to some old leadership norms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got to sacrifice, got to work hard, got to be available all the time for your people, got to serve the people. But that sometimes leads to these negative consequences. So you have to really pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can drop the ball a lot on a lot of things because you're focused so much on all aspects of work, right? You lose that focus that we talk about, so important as well.
Well, and creativity, right? So when you are, when you think about your relationship with work, and when the relationship with work is unhealthy, then you don't have that time, that the ability to balance the doing and the being, right? Which we talk quite a bit about. That's an essential polarity for leaders to leverage. If you're always doing and always focused on the challenges and the issues, there's no space or no room for creativity, for silence, for innovation for yourself, right? Because you are so focused on serving, doing. And so, that's something that we have helped leaders with as well, right? Slow it down, spend some time in the being element so that you can have time for reflection. You can step back and get that eagle eye view of the circumstances you're in, of the organization, of the challenges. Don't constantly be on that treadmill, running. It just burns you out and doesn't help you be innovative and creative and a strong leader. So,
well, that really brings us to how we help leaders recognize the interdependency between their professional life and their personal life, or between work and home. And we've recognized, and we've talked about it on previous podcasts, that There's a tendency for people to want to integrate the two. And the reality is they are interdependent. They're both their own entity, but we have to look at it through a both and lens. And that's so critical to our relationship to work, that it isn't all one. And that really requires the understanding of that relationship and how they're bound together by just a natural energy force. And it helps you appreciate the other perspective, the other pole, and
Mhm.
recognize that life is dynamic and we're always adjusting between our work life and our home life, our professional life and our personal life. So having it set within the right context is really important, how these work together.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't understand the nature of that interdependent
Mhm.
relationship, you're guaranteed to fail over time because you're going to overemphasize one and neglect the other. It's our natural tendency, and life is dynamic.
Yep.
There's always times, right, where you have to give more attention to one area of your life than you do another. If you have an elderly aging parent that you have to take care of, right, or a sick child, or who knows, there can be all kinds of things in your personal life that come up, maybe your own health, right, where you have to give attention to it, more attention than you have. So you have to really know how to be within this flow and leveraging the energy of these two together to always be striving to be your best in both and have that healthy relationship with the work that you do while you're having the life that you really want to thrive in and experience on an ongoing basis. And some of our habits, some of our habits aren't so healthy and they lead to right unhealthy experiences,
Mhm.
I think, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And it is really too about identity. I think a part of this is about some people get their identity from their work.
Oh,
And when
yeah.
you think about it in the States, for sure, right? When you meet somebody, you're always like, what do you do?
Mhm.
Right? Because that tells us so much about a person, we think. It tells us a lot about a person when we know what they do. Like, I'm a nurse, or I'm an accountant, or I'm a, right? It gives us some context for the person that we're talking to. But sometimes when you over identify with your work and your work becomes your identity, right? That can also have an impact. And so just even thinking about that when it comes to our relationship with work, who we are and how we show up,
Yeah, and there's
is something to think
also,
about.
I just thought of this, Tracy, but there's also data out there of how many people commit suicide after they retire because of that identity. Their work was their life, and
Mhm.
um, y- that they end their life.
Yeah. Yeah, because they don't know who they are without it.
Right,
So
right.
again, it's really about that relationship. And I think for those of us in the baby boomer age, right? Like, I mean, that work was
Oh,
the critical, that's how you identified yourself with the work that you did, right? But when you look at the newer generations, that's not how they want to be identified. So we get this contrast, right? And so again, it's just an example of how work is changing, our expectations are changing, what is valuable to us is changing, and the work environment can't remain the way it is. Our work cultures, our organizations, the infrastructures within our work environments cannot stay the way they are. We have to evolve and get innovative and creative in how we help people to have a healthy relationship with their work and get meaning from it, right? And get the value out of it and be recognized for their contributions and have their best possible personal life, right? It's that both and so it really is about being productive in the work environment and having a healthy relationships within the work environment and outside of the environment and with the work that you do, right? So just kind of this duality,
mhm,
polarity that
mhm,
we really have to think about and manage over time.
mhm. Yeah, and and as we change and we have more and more remote workers, it really causes us to pause and look at how we can build trust in that remote way, and what is really helping us move forward with our work.
Yeah, yeah, because that's another element of work, right?
Right.
Now we've had this whole shift to remote working.
Yes.
Now I remember when I was the only remote employee in the company we worked in. Like I was it. I was And we didn't even have Zoom. We had no visual. we only had like a conference phone,
Yeah.
right? So the only thing you got to hear was the voice, if you gave enough space to hear the voice, right? So it was really all about learning how to be engaged with remote employees and trust, right? You have to develop that trust that they are doing what they need to do. It's not about the number of hours or the time zone or the time frames, right? It's really about the relationship. And I think that's just really, really critical,
Mhm.
especially in these new days and times. So that's just another element of change that we're experiencing that's changing the relationship with work.
Mhm.
So that's a great point. And then the other thing is it's not all about the individual changing. It's also about the
Organization.
organizational. So it's that polarity between individual and organization too, right? And the organizations need to put things in place to create these infrastructures um, to cultivate a different culture, to cultivate a healthy relationship with work. But once they're put into place, you also, as an individual, have to engage with it in that way, right? So it's that both and of the individual has their work they have to do, and organizations do as well. I think that's another critical polarity to be leveraged overall.
Mhm. Mhm. So, some of the things that we practice, to look at our relationship with our work is really how we manage our time. That's a big piece of it,
Mm.
right? So that we're not always working. We actually build time in our calendar for ourselves and also for space, so that it isn't all about work. And we have found when we put space in our calendar, we actually are more productive. We have found that sometimes when we ha- do less or have less goals, focus on less, we actually get more done. So that's a very intentional action step that you can take in even thinking about how does time management, how does my calendar relate to how I look at work, my relationship with work.
Well, and that's about controlling what you can,
Yes.
right? And so, we really looked at our calendar and said, when are we the most productive? When are we the most innovative? What time of the day? What works best for us? And really blocking our time so that we have that time to be innovative, to be creative, to be quiet, to step back and get the eagle eye view, right? And doing it at a time that we are at our best to be able to do that. And then plugging all those other things, meetings and different things, project work into other times in the day and other days so that we're optimizing our ability to be our best. And I think, control that as much as you possibly can.
Yeah. Well,
We've learned a lot about that
right, we have. Well,
the hard way.
well, and it's really about designing the life that you want to live. So that comes with what are you doing with your time? How are you designing it? What choices are you making? And having your work really serve you and the life that you want and not the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. It is about designing your life.
Hmm.
And I think so often we live a life that's left over. Our life is the leftovers.
Yeah.
After we've given everything we can to our job, to our work, to others. And then you end up just, well, okay, here's what I'll do with what's left over, right? And that's not the way we're not here to live that way. We're here to enjoy life. Like we should be harnessing every opportunity. We only get one go around. And you don't know when that go around is going to be over. So it really is about harnessing every moment that you have and making sure that all that you're doing is in alignment with who it is you want to be and how you want to show up in the world and the things you want to experience on this trip and getting everything from it that you can, while you're giving as much as you can, right? So it's a giving and receiving of life, and really being in that place is a much more energizing, fulfilling, thriving way to live. And making the choices about your relationship with work and your life that you want. Drive from where you want to be.
Yeah, and I think we started out with some pretty alarming stats But I think what gets us excited is knowing that what we're bringing to the world, what we have made the choice to bring to the world can really impact and make a difference. So when you think back to the original, some of the original stats we started out with, that only 25% of the respondents of that large study felt consistently that they receive respect and value they deserve. From an organizational perspective, it is really important that leaders help understand these both and aspects of our relationship to work, because that will really make a difference. And then also, which is core, one of the core elements of being polarity intelligent, but also healthy relationships and meaningful dialogue. So these skills that we're teaching, that we practice ourselves, they really make a difference to challenge the way we think about work, but create work environments where people do feel respected and do feel valued.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
Absolutely.
to shift to huge change like this, right? And to sit, it really brings a different conversation, a different level of conversation when you can sit in dialogue and really explore these things with each other, right? What does our work, what gives us meaning? What do we need to do to create a culture where people feel valued, where they can actively participate, where they're making a difference, where they have that connection and meaning in their work? And how do we make that happen, right? And really just sitting collectively to have that conversation. It's a different kind of conversation and a different way of having it. So yeah, it's fundamental to culture shift and change, and especially in these kinds of times.
Mm-hmm.
Helps you see other people's perspectives and deepen the relationships, right? Which deepens the productivity. Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so we talked about a lot of things, brought a lot of stats today, right? And I think it's just mind blowing. I'm still, thinking about that. But I think the other thing to bring as we close is that change always begins with the individual. It's not all up to the individual, right, to make change happen, but all change happens first inside us and individually. And I think that's just a universal truth, right? Nothing changes until we change. And so we have to be willing to look at things differently, individually and as leaders
Mm-hmm.
in organizations, and help our organizations look at things differently, like we were just talking about. And I think that's one of the things that we do in our TRU Leader Mentorship Program, is to really help people step back and evaluate these things. Like, where do I get my meaning? What is the meaning of my work? What are the contributions I want to make? How do I want to live? What do I want to experience? And how can I get the best in both aspects of my life? And just really, where do I want to go next with all of this, right? And learning how to leverage and balance these tensions while we're making forward progress and moving towards a greater purpose, right? And really making mindful choices about our relationship to work, and leveraging the polarities, and then making sure all of that's in alignment, right, with who we are and what we are. And so that's the work that we do with the leaders in our program. So if you're at all thinking, wow, I want to know more about that, how do I, find this dynamic balance and leverage these three key components to have meaningful work and a meaningful, thriving life, then we'll put a link in the show notes, and you can just schedule really a discovery call with us. I'm happy to chat with you about what you're looking for, where you feel there's room for you to do some exploration, and whether the program's a good fit. So, we're all about helping people figure out how they can move forward and really get a healthy relationship with their work.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Right.
Right.
Right on.
Right on. Yes. So,
healthy work.
Thank you so much for being with us today with this really important conversation. We'd love to keep the conversation going, as Tracy said, and just know how much we appreciate you listening to our podcast. And And we love it when you share it with others. We love it when we hear from someone and they said, hey, I'd heard about your podcast in this way, so please share it with others. Subscribe if you haven't yet so you don't miss an episode. And if you prefer video over audio, make sure you check us out on our YouTube channel. So it was great being with you again today. Until we see you next time, stay safe and stay healthy.